The Things We All Carry is a podcast about first responders and their stories surrounding trauma on the job. The intention of this podcast is to raise awareness and share meaningful conversation around a subject often viewed as taboo or simply ignored. Be aware this content may be graphic and it is real. It may not be suitable for children or adults triggered by this subject matter. Welcome to The Things We All Carry. This week has been a trying week. Well, the last few weeks have been trying. I kind of went over it a little bit last week in my intro, discussing my mom's situation, how she's at the tail end of a fight with cancer. She's been in hospice for quite a while, and we all know that, excuse me, we all know that end is near, and we're preparing for that. And I'm in a little better place today when I think about it, and I think about her, and I think about the visit I had with her. It was productive. It was heart wrenching. It was gut wrenching. There was some laughter. There was some joy. Uh, it was tantamount to a goodbye, and it's hard to wrap your head around that. It's hard for me to accept that that would be a goodbye. I'm going to try and get back there as often as possible to see her before she does die. But it was a chance for me to tell her what I thought of her, what I've always thought of her, how much I respect her, how much I love her, and how much she's done for me, and how she's prepared me for this world. And it's funny for me to say, sitting here at 54 years old, that my mom's prepared me for the world, but it's been a battle, and she's done her part, and I'm proud to have had her as a mother, as a friend, as a confidant, and it scares me to wonder what life will be like without her. But at least I know now that when the inevitable comes, she knows that I love her, and she knows that I consider her my hero, and we are very clear on where we stand with each other. And it was a good visit with her, and um, I'm not at peace with her ultimate with the ultimate outcome with her dying, but I'm more at peace with knowing that she knows how I feel about her. There's been a change in the way that I do these intros just recently. This is only week 2 of it, so I'm kind of rambling a little bit, and I apologize. One of the things I've started doing with guests is asking about music. What's the last song they listened to? And just to introduce people to music, introduce myself to new music, to add that to the book selection and the everyday carry. So I kind of want to quote from a performer that I was turned on to by a good friend of mine, and he's out in Ohio now. His name is Mark Belanda, and you can find him on Instagram at Fooch for Mayor, and he's one of an original. Let's put it that way. He's one of my favorite people in the world, and he's one that's definitely checked in along this whole journey and tried to keep me sane. So I appreciate it. The artist he introduced me to is a guy named Steven Wilson Jr. And the song he has is called Werewolf. And the lyric that was on my mind today starts with, and I've square danced with demons and they've stepped on my feet. I ain't up here saying I made peace with the beast, but I threw him in a cage the best that I could. And I know he's still there. I'm no longer scared of the werewolf. It's a telling lyric. I think that as first responders, we all dance with some demons, and they definitely step on our feet. And we have to find our way to make peace with them. Um, my mom's been sick for 4+ years, and I've known what the ultimate outcome is going to be. And I think I'm just now starting to make peace with that beast. I know he's there. I know it's there. I know it's not going anywhere. But I'm not scared of it now. I don't want to lose her, but I know that her suffering will be gone once that happens. I'm not a religious person. I'm not going to get into what happens to a spirit or a body after we die. Um, Matter of fact, my mom and I even talked about that. So it was a very involved conversation that we had one on one, and I appreciate her listening to me, entertaining some of my words and thoughts. And I appreciate you guys tuning in every week for the same reason, to listen to these stories and support each other. Uh, it's been an amazing ride for the last, I don't know, what is it, 18 months that I've been doing this show. I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes. Well, shit, that's my entire life. I've learned a lot and I've made a lot of mistakes. That should be on my gravestone whenever I go. There are people out there that hate me. There's people out there that might love me, and then there might be some in the middle. But I think there's a lot on either side of that spectrum. Um, I'm just trying to live life the best I can. I'm trying to be me. I'm trying to not make mistakes, and I'm trying to make amends for the mistakes I make. Um, but I'm not gonna be scared of those demons anymore. I'm gonna make peace with those beasts that I'm carrying. Um, they're gonna still be there, but I have my ways to deal with them, and I have my future to look forward to. That being said, welcome to episode 88 of the Things We All Carry. This week, I'm welcoming a guy named Kevin Easley. Kevin is out of San Diego City. He's been a firefighter for 30 plus years. He's coming to the end of a career, and I guess you could say an illustrious career because he's done a lot of stuff in his career. He's seen a lot of things. He's been through a number of traumatic events, and he's had victories, and he's had losses, quite frankly. And he has learned how to deal with both of those. He's learned how to almost remake himself in some ways. He's been a captain on a heavy rescue in San Diego City for the majority of his career. He's a special operations guy through and through, and we talked for about 2 hours, and it was one of those conversations where I think we both just got lost in it, and probably could have talked for a little bit longer, but I had taken up enough of his time, and maybe he'd come back on and share some more. But so without further ado, I will step aside and let Kevin start telling his story. As always, I appreciate all the support. I appreciate every listener, every follower, every time you reach out to tell me that you've listened or that a show has impacted you. Uh, it just blows me away, and I appreciate it to no end. You guys get out there, enjoy your day, and go do something for yourselves. A quick reminder to please help us build a community which not only recognizes but supports each other through the struggles and recovery. Reach out through Instagram at The Things We All Carry or email my story at thethingsweallcarry.com to offer support and share your story. Please remember to leave a review on iTunes and give a shout out to any first responder you know, love, or care about. Y'all enjoy the show. I'll let you handle it from there, and then we'll just pick it up. Like I said, just have that conversation.
Yep.
All right. So welcome back to The Things We All Carry. Today I am speaking with Kevin. Kevin Easley is from California, San Diego area, correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
And well, it's morning there, so he's agreed to spend some time this morning with us and kind of tell his story and get a message out there. And, he and I talked, what's it been, Kevin? About a month ago?
Yeah. We spoke in person about a month ago, got to know each other a little bit. I think we've been playing tag on this concept for well over a year.
I think we have, yeah.
I've been pretty much a social media recluse for about a year and a half because of an injury I had at work and what my platform what my platform has become. It was never intended to be, but it became, an athletic site. And, with a work injury, it's kind of hard to be exposed that way.
So tell where are you working now? And what's your position?
So, my current employment is I work with San Diego City Fire Department, one of the bigger agencies on the West Coast. It's a big city that believes it's a small town still, right here on the most southwestern point of California. And I've been with San Diego City since 1997. I started my fire service career in 1992. One of those journeymen that, wanted to go to the show and always upgraded fire departments. And then I got to, San Diego City, and they offered all the programs I wanted to be involved in. And, jumped in real early, right around the time the War on Terror started. We had a huge expansion of our special operations division and got a lot of training through that, and I've dabbled in many branches. And the last decade I've spent in what I consider to be one of the top positions in any fire department, which is being a captain in the heavy rescue. I think being a captain on a heavy rescue, responding to all incidents of significance is probably the cream of the crop position that most people are pursuing in their career. Most people in the fire service tend to want to, I say most, and I believe it to be true that the majority of people will get in the fire service because they want to make other people's bad days better. Yeah, and most of those bad days are significant incidents, and the way to go to the most significant incidents in any major city is to ride on the rescue. You go to every greater alarm fire, you go to every vehicle rescue, you go to every special service call that um, the amazing fire department that you work for can't figure out without specialized
Right.
technicians, tools, equipment, and training. So I've had the luxury of the last decade of riding in that officer's seat on what we call Rescue Two. Um, our department calls it a USAR. They've called it that for probably 6 years now, but internally we refuse to call it USAR. I've never been on an urban search and rescue mission inside the city of San Diego. So
So before we get too far down into it, did you grow up in San Diego?
I grew up in San Diego. I wasn't born here. I was born back in Michigan, um, 1969. Last century, a lot of decades ago. Uh, I'm 54 years old. Um, and yeah, I was born in the Michigan area and spent some time moving between places all over Michigan, uh, Grand Rapids, Detroit, um, Ferndale, which is, a suburb of Detroit. My parents, uh, my dad was in school when he had me. And so like we didn't, we're living off their parents a lot. And my dad's dad had died when he was young. So we lived, for a short time with his mom right there in Detroit. And we came out here into San Diego in 1975. Uh, is when 1975. I remember the bicentennial 4th of July being out here for that. So it was winter 75, spring of 76 that we actually made it to California. And I've been roughly in the same place ever since. Went away to school, moved out of home at 17 years old and decided to find my way through some education and made my way back.
So what was growing up like for you? Is it a stable house or what'd you have going on?
Oh fuck no. I'm a broken soul right from the beginning. Um, it's funny, I know we're talking about, the things we all carry and has to do with post-traumatic stress. And probably my first post-traumatic stress was, getting real personal here. And, my parents are both alive. I don't think they will ever know that I recorded this, but, I don't believe in airing dirty laundry, but I'm just going to put it out there. I was 8 or 9 years old. My parents had an unstable, horrible relationship. Neither one of them really knew how to be a wife or, or a husband. And neither one of them were really good parents as far as doing what they were supposed to do. Their backgrounds, I'm not even going to get into their backgrounds, but there was a lot of dysfunction they taught us as kids. That I remember going to the local county fair, which was at the Del Mar Fairgrounds here in the county, and right near the racetrack. My parents got in a public argument of who had an affair with who, and they decided to discuss that, and I was horrified. And to this day, at 54 years old, I make every intention to not go to the Del Mar Fair. And uh, of my four kids, I think only maybe two of them have actually been there, and I'm not sure it's been. It's just something I don't pursue. Just it traumatized me, and but it did make me a better man. Um, that whole concept of integrity and loyalty came out of that because that you know that selfish argument that they had threw a fucking fragmentation grenade right into my life, and my family destroyed right at that point. Or what my concept was of a healthy family, it went away, and I ended up being raised by a single father who had been in school and pursuing, he had first pursued engineering school, failed out of engineering school, made his way through miraculously through medical school and became a pretty good doctor. But he built that practice while he was raising me. And so I was a single latchkey kid, that had moved out with him, and I was always in trouble. I was always in trouble because I was never supervised and I was doing a lot of stupid shit. Got arrested as a kid and fought as a kid. And, it, a lot of stuff I'm not embarrassed or not proud of, very embarrassed of my past and, what I did to myself and the things I did to others. Or, very much, uh, you know, trying to raise myself and figure out life. And the funny thing was my dad had so little time for me. He got me involved in Boy Scouts. And as funny as that sounds, I ended up in this Boy Scout troop that uh, honestly, um, I wouldn't say they traumatized me in any way, but it was an abnormal environment. Um, and when people think of Boy Scouts nowadays, they think of like, oh, nerds and, um, sexual molestation and all this stuff. But this troop I was involved in was run by a San Diego City vice cop. And imagine someone that was overweight in the 80s and was bald but had long hair and looked like a Harley Davidson motorcycle gang guy, a Hell's Angel, and because that was the crowd that he had to infiltrate all the time. So that was his look. He was always unshaven. He was uh, had he had long, dirty hair. Always wore like leather vests and stuff. Well, this was our scout leader, and in his time, he took us out to the desert and the forests, and he gave us amazing trips and opportunities. But he let us run ourselves, and it ended up being very Lords of the Fly, or is that right? The
Yeah.
Lord of the Flies,
Yeah.
Lord of the
Lord of
Flies.
yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
name of
Yeah.
that book. And you know, almost everybody in that troop that survived initiation and selection went on to be very successful. But we as kids, we weeded out weakness at a very early age, and we made each other stronger. But if people couldn't hang, if they were there for the wrong reasons, and I hate to say it, it's almost like we were like a little criminal gang that he had created out of his mentality of living in that vice life. Um, and unfortunately, that was a huge carryover in my career as well. Um, I should say, unfortunately, it's been that way all along. Uh, I think some of that mindset actually makes some of the best special operations firefighters. Being able to think outside the box and seeing adversity as a challenge and looking at things of like, well, no one else is going to do it. I'm going to do it. I have the balls to do it. I'm going to go do it. And so some of the best rescue firefighters I ever had are the people that have been made outside of that mold where, if they'd taken a different turn in life, they could have been a really good criminal, you know?
You say that's a benefit, and then it obviously is. But do you? And I mean, we're going to get into more of that story, and I think I know the answer, but I want to kind of hear how you would frame it. Do you think that has also been a hindrance, though, in dealing with some of that stuff?
Absolutely. I think there are things that have come out of that have definitely put a glass ceiling on myself. Um, and I can sit here and justify it any way I want that like, oh, I'm in the position I always wanted to be, but I'm definitely not a person that, the brass, the administration, whatever you want to call them, that uh, they don't want me past this level. They would see me as a person that brings more problems um, than it's worth. And that's a realization I've come to have in the last 5 years of my life. That there are a lot of people in administrative positions that um, have spent a lot of their time in administrative positions, and they're looking for administrative teammates.
Mm.
And with that being said, uh, there I think every department has this where they have administrators and operators. And every once in a while, there's a hybrid employee that can be an operator and an administrator, and they can do it really well. Or they can be an administration person at a very low level. I was very successful in that, running the training program for the technical rescue team. But at the same time, uh, definitely rub people wrong ways a lot of times, because of uh, the social skills that came out of that world. My social skills are not the greatest. I know that to be true. And it's something, as I've aged, I've worked to really change. Uh, to be a better version of myself, a more Christ-like version of myself, someone that has more patience, benevolence, understanding, empathy. Empathy is a huge word that I really didn't have for a very long time. Uh, so, yes, I do believe that those rough beginnings um, of life make better operators, but it is not conducive to it being an administrator at all.
And you talked about, you growing up and then finding your way to go to school somewhere and kind of do it on your own, correct?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
where did you go to school?
Well, it's a funny story actually. The I had I was in I graduated high school in 1987. I was trying to join the military, and my dad was 100% against it. And I was 17 years old, and he would not emancipate me to sign the papers. And I had gone to the recruiters here, and just like every little small town, I grew up in the rural area, like farm ranch area of a little town in East San Diego called El Cajon. And so I'd gone to the recruiters on my own, and yeah, I had looked for the Green Beret contract, and
Mhm.
one of my friends was doing it. One of the friends I was graduating with was doing it, and I had this army recruiter telling me everything I wanted to hear, whether it was true or not, and
They're good at
probably
that, by
wasn't
the
good.
way.
Yeah, it probably wasn't going to be true. And my dad would not sign away my rights, and he said, "I will do it if you apply for 3 schools, and with the deal that, like, if you get in, you have to go and keep your word."
Hmm.
So I applied for, being the fuck you type of kid, not wanting to do it. And you got to understand, like, I graduated with barely over a 2.0 in high school. I was not the typical student. I was ditching school to go surf, ditching school to do other things. I did play sports, but my senior year I was academically ineligible, and that really messed things up. Um, so I like every other kid, we took the SAT. I scored very high on the SAT, abnormally high. And so I applied for USC, thinking like, well, if he's going to have to pay for it, he'll have to pay a lot of
Yeah,
money.
shoot for the moon kinda thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so I applied for University of Arizona because I had like 8 friends from high school that were going there. And then I actually had a sponsorship to apply for the Naval Academy, even though my grades were dog crap. Uh, So the one that actually got back to me right away and I got in was University of Arizona. And I got in as a late enrollment, and my dad packed my shit up and drove me over there. And literally he got me near campus on a day that after we'd stayed in a hotel, and he dropped me off and he said, "Go figure it out.
Hmm.
Find a roommate, get your classes. Here's $100. Don't call me until you have a place to live, a roommate, and you're in your classes." And he left. And that was a big day in growing up.
Yeah, that'll
Uh,
force you to grow a little bit pretty quickly.
yeah, yeah. So I did. I got in classes, and I did end up graduating in 4.5 years. I had to work my way through. I had a job the whole time through, and that's a whole nother story.
So you graduate with what degree?
Generally nothing, is what I've called it over my life. I I I wavered back and forth because I had no direction, and I never really understood why I was there. There was nothing that interested me enough to want to pursue it as a profession. And, so the military was still pulling on me, and so, I started off with engineering, and, my first semester, I was doing really well with all my science education. For the first time in my life, I was actually a good student and applying myself. And, then I found fraternities and, uh, joined a fraternity my spring semester of my freshman year, and was on my way home from one of those events on a mountain bike to the apartment I was living in off campus. And I got blasted by a car and ended up in the hospital. Had a traumatic brain injury and almost, you know, had to have a hole drilled in my head. And I almost failed out of school that semester. Uh, and then I obviously failed the fraternity pledgeship and didn't go back to it. Ended up a year later joining another fraternity, even though that one had offered me to come back. Um, and that was something that I was always drawn to was, the team environment. And so I ended up playing water polo at that school because I was trying to still go military. And so I thought, well, I better stay in shape.
Right.
So I joined the water polo team. It was a club team that competed at the Division I level. So we would travel and, play against Air Force, USC, Long Beach State, San Diego State, all these different programs out west. And, I did well in that, stayed in shape. And then I was about to graduate and, I had basically found out that I was not going to do well in the engineering program. So I just started studying I went to the counselor. They steered me down this path of this thing called general studies. And, they said, yeah, you can get out of here in 4.5 years, with where you are after almost failing out. When it was on my dime and I was working, to do it and trying to do all these other things and have a life, I thought it was like good just to get out, just finish something, get done and start working towards possibly going to an officer candidate school for the military. And so I was on the path again for that to go to the military. And it was December of, I want to say 91. And, and had just found out that everything I had applied for the military, they were like, yeah, we just kicked the shit out of Iraq in like X number of days. And, the Navy was where I was applying for was, they said they were going from a 600 ship Navy to a 200 ship Navy. And so, I didn't fit the bill for coming in there. Matter of fact, they were canceling a lot of contracts coming out of the academy and ROTC and OCS.
Yeah, it
So I
was
was
a
kind of like at a loss.
massive downsizing at that time.
It was a massive downsizing. Like the Reagan military was going through a huge drawdown after, I think at the time, like very similar to what's going on right now, that you have this big scary monster on the other side of the world. I remember Iran and Iraq during the 80s had been in this like 15-year war where no one
Mhm.
made any progress.
No.
And they had talked about it and said, oh, we're going to go invade Iraq. And everyone thought, well, that's, they're battle hardened and they've been fighting for 10 to 15 years and they're the sixth largest standing army in the world. Well, yeah. I mean, it lasted like, what, 3 weeks of ground contact
Right.
and they completely fell, and, like obviously Reagan had done something right building up, the world's greatest military power that the world had ever seen. And, after they realized like, wow, invested a lot of money into this machine, but just destroyed number six in a matter of 3 weeks. Maybe we don't need 600 ship Navy and, there however many fighter wings and army regiments and brigades, combat brigades that they had. So they downsized. And with that, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And, I was sitting on the sun deck of the fraternity house drinking a beer and the fraternity house across the street caught on fire. And I saw Tucson Fire Department show up, put it out, and I thought, I can do that. Yeah. I was like, that's pretty cool. When I get out of here, I'm going to go figure out how to do that. And I did. Um, I was fortunate. I had my sister had been dating a guy that was in a small department in San Diego County, and she ended up marrying him, having a couple kids with him, and they're still together to this day. And he did his 30 years, and he coached me up on how to win an interview. And I went out. Very first interview I ever did, I got hired, and I got hired without being an EMT. No specialty training at all. I was told later the reason I got hired was because I had going back and tying it all back. My interview had nothing on it. I had like sports captain, graduate, college, blah, 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 but I didn't have anything. But the thing that stood out to the panel was I had finished and made it to Eagle Scout.
Hmm.
And they thought like, if a kid can do that when he's young, then he's going to fit into this military organization. He's going to finish whatever assignments we give him. And, I had no hazardous materials awareness training yet. I had never been to EMT school. And I spent my first 6 months as a firefighter in 92, not even being an EMT. I was just a straight up knuckle dragging hose monkey. That's all I did.
And so that's 92. And then what size department is that you start with?
I was hired by the one station's lowest paid fire department in the state of California. And, hold on to your socks, kids, because if you are listening, thinking that firefighting is a lucrative career, my first year, I made less than $13,000 in 1992. And I had to have 2 other jobs to make ends meet. And they were not fun jobs. They were, my family makes fun of it all the time. I sold women's shoes at a department store called Nordstrom.
Yeah.
And I made more money doing that than I did doing firefighting. And, but yeah, and I made $13,000 a year. So that's, less than, what was that? Was that less than $1,100 a month? So people are making that and more than that in one shift of overtime now.
I was gonna say, I just Googled it just to see what in today's value it would be, and it's roughly $29,000 in today's value.
Yeah, that's it was tough.
Yeah,
It was very, very tough.
especially considering you're living in California now. The cost of living isn't as high in 92 as it is in 2023, but it's still up there.
Yeah, yeah. I think California's always been an expensive place to live. And then there's also the governments out here, like I said earlier about the, big city with the small town mentality. Every industry out here is paid less because they consider it, oh, it's the sunshine tax.
Yeah.
Because people live, because you have good weather, you should make less money. Whatever.
So it takes you how many years again? So you go, I forget now, and I apologize. How many years
Not a problem.
before you get to San Diego then?
Well, I hopped around in a few more small departments. And the department that originally hired me went through a consolidation, became a 2-station department. It
Okay.
was a big expansion. And
Hey,
with
if
that,
you
I
say
became
it
an
doubled in
engineer.
size, it sounds much more impressive, by the way.
It doubled in size. Yeah. And with that, I became an engineer. And
Okay.
as an engineer, I was making $18,000 a year, and it was really fast promotion, but it was a financial thing. And I remember one of my good friends. He was also an engineer, forced to be a captain because no one wanted to be a captain there because everyone wanted out, and no one wanted to try to go to an interview for a large agency where it's LA City, LA County, Orange County, or San Diego. I don't even think Orange County existed at the time. I think they were going bankrupt at the time. But nobody wanted to go to those interviews and say, well, I'm a captain at this small department. And then people would be like, well, why would you want to leave being a captain and come
Right.
here and be a boot? So I remember this one time I was 25 or 26 years old. And we were driving down the main street of the city of El Cajon, and he was an engineer and I was an engineer. I was driving for him and he was OCing as a captain. I looked at him and I said, hey man, and do you realize these people looking around think like we're grownups, and like we're in charge and we can solve any problem. Do you think they even realize that we're just a couple punk kids that, are just trying to get out of here and go learn from somebody. Um, and then we made a deal with each other to get out by 97, to get to a larger agency, one that paid better, one where we could have a family and a career
Mhm.
and live working one job. And so we made a deal that if our pursuit wasn't done by the end of 97, we were out of there. And he and I both made it out. I made it out to San Diego, and he made it out to a small city called Santee, which is a neighboring city. And he just retired recently as their fire two,
Hmm.
and he made it all the way up to this, assistant chief of that department.
Nice.
Yeah.
So then, so you find your way to San Diego City,
Yep. Made it to
and
San Diego City in 97.
how's that for a change?
It was night and day. And because the agency I had worked for out here is in an area called Heartland, and actually there's now a Heartland Fire Department that encompasses three of those cities that were part of it. But every rig was a different color. Everyone had the same hose lays, but everyone had different turnout colors, different helmets, different different logos on the door of their apparatus. Everyone was um, 3-person staffing, and not everyone was paramedic. There was very little paramedic at the time. The paramedics were on the ambulance only. And then I made it over to San Diego City, and after I got through the academy, which back in the day in the 90s, the San Diego City Academy was run pretty much like Marine Corps boot camp. It was pretty intense, and because a bunch of old Marine DIs ran it. But my first fire coming out of uh, San Diego, I was on a truck, which I'd never been on a truck before, and it was a third alarm, and it was right underneath the glide path downtown. And I remember it vividly that as we pulled up on the second truck arriving, and truck one out of the big house downtown, that's what they call Station One. They already had the aerial up, and they were about to start flowing defensive water. We pulled around on the opposite side of the building. Back then, it wasn't side 1, 2, 3, 4 Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta. It was I'll be honest, in the late 90s, we were still cowboy free for all. The ICS system and strategy and tactics was very minimal. It was basically decided upon by the personalities that were at scene. And this guy that had hired me, this guy named Bill Middleton, he was a captain. And he had always worked downtown. He had actually been my interviewing captain to bring me into San Diego City. We pulled up on truck 5, and he comes out of it, and they're about to go defensive. And this battalion chief on B division named Mike Reed, he's now dead. He died of Lou Gehrig's disease. Um, amazing leader and battalion chief. He was about to go defensive, and Bill Middleton walks out of this building. He says, "Give me a truck company with some hooks and a 2.5, and I'll save this building." And he turns to us on truck 5, and he says, "Well, you heard the man. Go with him." And we went in there and kicked ass and saved the building. That building's still there to this day, and it's actually in my current district. And I think about it often, and I think about how I learned a lot from Bill Middleton. He's still alive. His son is now a captain on our job, a well-respected captain in the busy sections of our department. But the biggest thing I took away from it was I looked around at this third alarm fire, and every rig was the same color, and every door had the same logo. And I think it went third alarm. Yeah, it did go third alarm. There were 7 trucks. Rescue was there, and all these pumps. And I thought, man, I made it. I made it to the show.
Hmm.
This is a big deal. This is a big city. We don't need help from anyone else. We got this. And that was probably the coolest thing I learned out of that was, it's no longer like uh, the dysfunction of interdepartment relationships. It was one team, and that was cool.
So when do you start to get to the subjects at hand? When do you start feeling these things pile up on you?
What the funny thing is that it goes way back to the Heartland days, and I remember it vividly. October 30th of 93 was the beginning of my professional traumatic experiences. Um, I was on a firefight. I was a firefighter on an open cab engine, and back then, we had a roof, but it was open on the firefighter riding position, and you would hear the captain hit on the roof. Uh, once if it was a medical aid, and twice if it was a fire, and you knew you're going to a call. And we had just come off the Interstate 8 that goes through San Diego out to Phoenix. We'd had a brush fire on it, and we're driving back to the station, and I hear the one thump. So, okay, we're going to a medical aid. So, and we pull up to this medical aid. We get off at Mollison, just about a mile down the highway, and then turn south on it and pull up this intersection, Madison and Mollison. And when we stop, this guy jumps up on my running board as I'm standing up because I don't know what I'm doing yet. And he's dressed in a St. Louis Cardinals baseball uniform, full, like, vivid to this day. I still remember exactly what he looks like. He looked like almost like a Ned Flanders mustache, wearing a full white St. Louis Cardinals baseball uniform. He'd just been coaching Little League baseball or travel baseball. And he says, "You got to go get that kid." And I didn't know what he was talking about. And all of a sudden I hear gunfire, and I see this kid laying in the street, and there's a lady running. It's actually in a parking lot, and there's a lady, older lady, running for that kid. And all of a sudden she gets shot in the back and she goes down. And it was just like those videos that you see of people storming the beach in D-Day, Normandy. And then I hear gunfire to my left, and I look over and there's El Cajon PD cops shooting back at this guy. And then I hear him discharge again. I look up and he's on a balcony of an apartment. He's shooting at the cops. And then somehow he ends up swinging his rifle towards us. And he starts shooting at us. And then the engineer of the rig I was on just puts it in reverse and floors it. And I'm thrown down inside the cab, and we're out of there. And the next time I see that little girl, she's dying in the life flight landing zone.
Mhm.
And I'll be perfectly honest, that I was not equipped at that stage of life, um, 24 years old, to see someone murdered that way, and innocent, to see that, a child had been murdered that way, and to see that a grandparent had been murdered that way. And then, to be shot at, which, now unfortunately, it's commonplace in the fire service. People get shot at in the fire service. We've had people at our work stabbed. Um, but at the time I was not ready for that. And, um, the crazy thing is that we didn't really have any post-traumatic stress counseling after that to figure it out. And it became a very personal experience where I could not speak about that incident without welling up emotionally unless someone else had been there. If someone had been there and they had so-called seen that elephant with me, I could talk to them. That when people wanted to ask about it, I remember that one of my mom's sisters had come in town, and she said, "Oh, I saw that on CNN. Tell me about that." And in my head, like, this is my sweet aunt. Like, I'm not going to say this to her, but in my head, I was like, "Who the fuck are you to ask me about that?" Like, leave me alone. Like, that, you weren't there. You don't know how that felt. You didn't see it. You don't hear the sounds. And I didn't realize at the time that, like, this had added on to other things previous in my life, that it was baggage, and it took a long time. And that actually, like, the pain of it went away way later in my life. And that was in the 2018 time, when I had decided, like, I really needed to fix myself, because that old analogy that you always hear, and it sounds so cliche, that, like, oh, hey, like, you're a glass, and as you travel down the path in the fire service, they're going to pour liquid in the glass, and eventually, if you don't, drain it, it's going to overflow. And, I always thought, those are the people that aren't suited to be in the fire service. They're just weak.
Right.
No, no, it's true. It's true. And, like, every experience is different for every person. I think that the people who choose the fire service, and and law enforcement and the military that are in combat arms, I think they're much more emotionally resilient than the average person. And I think they can handle more. Problem is they handle more and more and more and more. And they find coping mechanisms and they think they're okay until one day they're not.
Yeah, and
And
those coping mechanisms are always questionable at times. Or not always, but many times questionable.
oh, absolutely. And, my coping mechanisms are, I've never been a drug user per se, right? I've never been the person that like, oh, I'm going to get high on cocaine and party all night. I've never tried cocaine. But up until recently, I didn't even classify what I was using as drugs. I wouldn't tell myself they were drugs. Alcohol was not a drug to me. And here's a shocker one, boys, and girls, uh, caffeine,
Yeah.
because, uh, guess what? Um, some of you may be still doing this, but I was living a life where I was using alcohol as a downer to, have the benzodiazepine effect of healing brain trauma and to stop thinking about things and to be able to sleep. And then I was using caffeine in copious amounts, uh, to get up and go and to function in life, to function with my family. And that really came to a head prior to 2018. I was working at uh, one of the busiest stations in the country. It was Station 4 in San Diego. It's in the East Village gas lamp area. And every year it's either the first, second, or third busiest station in our city. And it's the Skid Row of our city. It's right there by the Padres ballpark. And it's rife with homelessness, violence, and crime. And the violence that's there is the psychiatric violence. It's not a gang area. It's
Right.
not a gang area where you can treat people with respect and courtesy, and they'll treat you with respect and courtesy because you're there to help them. This is one of those places that you have no idea what that psychopath is doing, what medicines they're off, what medicines they're on, what drugs they're on, and they're completely unpredictable, um, and they're violent, and they're all armed because they live on the street. And that I'm sure is the exact same for every major city that has a homeless population. It's right there. Well, ours was there, and we were running 7,000 calls a year on our engine trying to protect our rescue, so that the rescue was available for rescue calls. When I say rescue, all the people out there, I'm not talking about an ambulance. I'm talking about an actual heavy rescue. Call it a squad, call it a heavy rescue, call it a USAR, call it whatever you want. We inside our team, we call it the rescue. Um, but like if you're running medical aid on the rescue, you're not available for the incidents of significance. So
No.
the pump was jumping every single call we could to keep it available and in quarters. And you're up, when you average out, over I think it was 7,192 or something like that. The last year we were there as a team. And you start doing the math on that. It's a ridiculous amount. You're not getting any sleep. And when you do get to go home, you're trying to live your normal life.
Mm.
Well, you got to sleep. You're wound up high. So you drink to go to sleep. And then you wake up and you're probably still drunk, still under the influence. It's time to go get the kids or, go meet the wife for lunch or do something, shop for dinner. And then you're using caffeine to get yourself up and going. And that just makes everything worse. And that sleep deprivation and no REM sleep adds to the psychosis that everything in this trade contributes to. And I know that was a long roundabout, but it's all one giant picture.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you and I could go probably for hours talking about significant calls over a span of a 30-year career.
Oh, death is my business.
Right.
You know, it's, I can't go anywhere in this county without thinking about dead people. I have hundreds of ghosts in my head, and I've seen people die in the worst ways, and it doesn't go away. We joke about it inside my division. We have three divisions in our team, A, B, and C. Probably like most people, most departments in this country, and we call it riding the Reaper. When you're on rescue, more often than not, you're recovering someone, you're not rescuing someone. the rescues are few and far between. More often than not, you're recovering someone, whether it's someone that got blasted by a train, someone that drowned, someone that got buried in a confined space, someone that went through a machine that, took their life. All those things are unfortunate things that, you have to go get, or, even just like as crazy as it seems and how minimal as it seems, we have homeless people living underground here in San Diego. ACLU has deemed all of the drainage systems in California to be a place that is reasonable for them to live in, and have kept all the state and local agencies from putting any kind of restrictive plating or mechanism to keep homeless people out of it. So homeless people live underground. And when it doesn't rain for 6 months at a time, sometimes they die underground. And then it's confined space body recovery.
Right.
And you're going in there and that body's been in there for, 3 weeks since the last homeless person visited that person. You got to go get them. It's, there's a lot of visual uh, baggage that comes along with the job.
Yeah, and it's almost the I don't wanna say ancillary, but it's the stuff that nobody thinks about when they think about firefighters experiencing traumas. You know, a body recovery, I think the civilians, we use that term, don't even think about that part for fire and rescue.
They don't. They don't. They think everything is they think everything is a save
Mhm.
or a medical aid, or when a save happens, everything's good. They don't think about the things like uh, like when you're pulling someone out of a burning building, and when you're in a high heat situation and then all their skin sloughs off as you're trying to drag them out. They don't think about that stuff. They and it's funny because funny but not so funny. People often the question, and I know all of you can relate to this. You get the question, "What's the worst thing you ever saw?" And the answer that is inside all of our heads is, first, like, you're not entitled to know that. But second, do you really want to lose sleep? Because, like, I'm going to tell you things you can't even imagine, and you're going to be vicariously traumatized because you're going to have to live with that image in your head, and it's there. And I don't think I'm special. I don't think that I'm any different than anyone else. There's plenty of people inside this profession across this country that are carrying all those things in their head personally and not sharing it. It's a very private thing.
Hey, guys, quick break right here just to check in and thank each of you for listening to the show. Your support has been paramount, and I appreciate all of you. I have one request, though. I need you to share the show with everyone you know. Help me get the word out and spread these stories as far and as wide as we can. While you're at it, please leave a review of the show wherever you happen to listen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time to share your story, to talk, or to pass on suggestions. Let's get on with the rest of the show. So you talked about 2018 being kind of a turning point, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 2018 was a huge turning point.
What
That
makes
was,
it a turning point and why?
there was another traumatic event, and there was some good. So there was a horrific event and there was good. Um, when I was speaking of being at Station 4, um, that was an environment that was destroying me, and I was refusing to admit it. I was carrying so much baggage, doing the wrong things, living the wrong life, um, never cheating on my wife, never doing any of that kind of stuff. But the drinking, the self medicating, the coping, the abusive behavior as a result of sleep deprivation, the psychosis spinning out of control as a result of sleep deprivation. All of it was accumulating, and the administration of our department realized that, like, hey, we've invested a ton of money in this team. We're a closed list. You have to be qualified, trained, educated, and selected to come into the technical rescue program. Um, and the department had, running a technical rescue program is very expensive for any city. And the city of San Diego had said, like, this program would be more effective if we can get them out of this blight where they're more available to do what they're supposed to do and have more time to train. So they decided to move us to the other side of downtown where there was already an engine company there. They moved us over to the Bayside by Little Italy. So the reprieve was coming up where there would be more sleep, more time to train, more downtime. That was coming. So the the downside of what happened was we were at a fire uh, in the gas lamp area, kitchen fire early in the morning, and it was a nothing fire, just like anything else. Kitchen fire, restaurant, the gas lamp had been self extinguished by an automatic extinguishment system, and so there was nothing for rescue to do. And the battalion chief said, "Hey, there's a fire breaking over at the beach, 20 miles away, and sounds like people are trapped, and everyone's going to have a hard time getting to that spot." And if anyone knows San Diego, it's right by the Belmont roller coaster, right on the beach. And and he says, "Just start going. It's going multiple alarms. Just go." And he cut us loose from that fire in the restaurant. So we hit the freeway, and sure enough, as the sun's coming up, I still have a picture of it. There's a header on the horizon. Like we're 15 miles away, and there's a header. And we ended up being the first arriving unit of the second alarm, the last arriving unit of the first alarm. As soon as the battalion chief heard we were there, he says, "Hey, I have victims trapped on the second floor. Go for search and rescue." And so me and my guys did. I had a very well trained crew. We'd done this many times and trained on this evolution many times. On the rescue, we run two ticks, one for the left side of the rig, one for the right side of the rig. We don't have a walkthrough. We have a cab,
Mhm.
and we have two firefighters, one paramedic, one non-paramedic, and then an engineer and a captain on the rig. So the firefighter paramedic was behind me, and with that guy, he and I knew we had the responsibility of a searchline, a tick, and a set of irons, and each of us wear a go home tool. And we knew that the right side of the building was ours as soon as we went through the door, and the engineer knew that the left side of the building was there. And then the firefighters would talk to each other on the radio, and the engineer and the captain talked to each other on the command group and listen to the whole incident on the command group. And we split the team and real quick search as fast as we can. And so we went in, and my firefighter Scott and I, we went right, and immediately, well, actually, as we're going up the stairs in the back, the entrance is off the Charlie side, and the first alarm had stretched lines, and they couldn't get water on the fire. They had stretched short because they had to drag around a block and access the stairs off the alley. That was the access. It was a taxpayer building. It was commercial with commercial on the bottom with apartments above, and center hallway apartments above. And it was an older building, probably platform construction right after the war, not balloon. Uh, and so as we're going up the back stairs, and I remember this vividly, this other guy that is a uh, firefighter that worked, uh, he's now promoted, but he was a guy that came through as a relief firefighter at rescue. Often he said, "Hey, don't go. I've stretched as far as I can go. I can't give you protection." And I just remember Scott with me says, "Copy that." And I said, "Let's go, Scott." And we knew we were going, and we went. We made it to the second floor, and um, my guys, and I try not to use names. I'm not going to use full names, but my engineer Steve and firefighter Dustin, they went left, and they're searching. It's hot, and high heat and zero days. And Scott and I had a staircase to the right that was on fire. We went up that, and there was a bedroom up there. We searched that. We came down, and I thought, like, the whole time, I'm like, "Oh, great. I'm crawling on this floor, fire below me." Went up the burning staircase. I was like, "I'm probably going to go through the floor again." And I've never vividly thinking that, like, and fortunately, it didn't happen. We came down, we searched, and the way we would save air is every room we came across, the the guy with the tick would stay at the door, and the other guy would go in. It wasn't like captains have it easy on this. Like, the way I'd worked with these guys was I would take my turn searching rooms too. And so Scott's watching me from the door, and we had a bedroom, and he gave me the look at the tick real quick, and I looked. It was a bedroom, and I saw where the bed was. I saw where the closet was, and I dove in, got in there, and as soon as I got away from the tick, it was black and hot. It was zero visibility, 100% black. Can't even see your own light. And search the room, no problem. Like, and I remember we came out of that and we're like, hey, primary's clear. We called it, and then water's getting up there. They're putting the fire out, and we're on to another assignment. I think we went up to the roof with a truck, and because fire had run like up to the parapet, and we're helping with that. And all of a sudden, I hear on the secondary they got a victim coming out,
Mm.
and my stomach just dropped.
Yeah.
And and he came out CPR status. He died, and I asked the company that found him where they found him, and it was in my room. And he was wedged between the bed and the wall. And I had reached under the bed and I had searched on top of the bed, but I didn't pull the bed away from the wall, and I missed him, and he died. Um, a lot of people have, long story short, right then and there, that was like where I went into a deep spiral. Um, my my behavior was ruining home at the time, and now I had lost at work, and I felt like I killed somebody, and that seed planted in my head that I killed him, and I went into a horrible, horrible place, and guilt, survivor's guilt, everything that had ever been poured in my cup, everything was overflowing, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that I had never had a healthy coping mechanism, hadn't been going to counseling, hadn't used any of the methods I've been using as of late, the last few years, to actually be a mentally healthy individual. Um, and it took me down to a real deep, dark place, and put me put me into a point where I remember journaling after that. I remember that one time I actually wrote in my journal, "Am I crazy?" And I felt totally insane, and became very suicidal, and just didn't want to be here. And um, well, it was very hard to keep going. It was very emotional, even though shortly after that we moved out of that busy station and I started getting sleep. I was in a bad spot, and it took a lot of things changing, including me wanting to change, wanting to live for my wife, for my kids, to keep my family together, because I was destroying my family. My behavior, my attitudes were destroying my marriage, destroying my kids. They didn't want to be around me. I didn't even want to be around me. I didn't want to be who I was. And so I had to make a choice, either end it and get over it, or, you know, don't quit and survive. And, I chose to survive, and get better. And that took exploring a lot of things, and it took a lot of work. Um, and I'm not unique in this. I'm not unique in the suicidal ideations. This hat I'm wearing right now is one of my fellow rescue captains who we buried 2 years ago. He took his own life. Um, he wrote on I carried his remains to his grave, on my left in rescue. His name's Paul Pereira. And I say that because, we die twice. And that is when we physically die. And the second time is when people don't remember your name. They don't say your name anymore. And the whole time I'm alive, I will continue to say Paul's.
Yeah, that topic, that suicide, it when it happens close to you or in even just in the department or ancillary to you, it hits so hard.
You know, I get it. People, I get it because I've been there. That it makes sense. It's going to be better without you around.
Mhm.
But the ripple that comes out of it, it's wide. It's wide, and that wake never stops rocking. It never stops. Um, you leave holes everywhere you go. And it's selfish. I realize that. And, I want to be available to anybody. It's battling that. If they need to talk, I'll talk to them. I I'm, I'm not saying I'm successful in keeping people from doing anything. Obviously, I'm wearing a hat from someone that didn't make it, but there is another side, and the sun will come up. You have to choose to be happy, and you have to choose to persevere, and you have to find what works for you. And there are so many different ways of what will work for you, but I'll tell you what won't. Internalizing and using drugs to cope will not work. And that goes back to what I said earlier is that, yeah, coffee and alcohol with that sleep deprivation and shutting down and waking up, those are drugs. Those are uppers and downers, kids. And, that's not going to work. It's not healthy.
So you talked about after this fire, you talked about writing, "Am I crazy?" And so you're obviously questioning your own sanity.
Yeah.
What makes you what makes you question it? What are the manifestations of quote unquote crazy for you?
For me, it was just wanting to harm myself, I vividly remember there were times I would look at, well, first off, around this time, right after that, I started journaling. And then I started the tier one athletes page, and it started off, and a lot of the posts are gone, but I would start to write things anonymously, just trying to get my head out, trying to get things out of my head, try to make
Right.
sense of um, where I was going, the darkness, memories, uh, and then like that turned into someone following it. And then it turned into 100 people, and then it turned to 500 people, and it turned to 1,000. And I was like, I remember 5,000. And then like people started asking me for coaching and guest speaking. And all of a sudden, like I'm not anonymous anymore. Um, but in that time that um, being withdrawn and spiraling internally, there were times I actually thought like, well, if I don't kill myself, this phone that I have is the only thing that ties me to this world. And I would often envision myself throwing it into a trash can and walking away from my life, no one knowing where I was and just disappearing, just wanting to get out, to get out of my life, my existence. And the problem is that my peace in all of that was actually my addiction of trauma. That the outside world was my chaos. Inside work, mayhem, trauma was where I was at peace.
Yeah, that's a
It,
theme we've talked about throughout this show. And you're right, it's very real. That chaos is comforting to people.
and it, and it's so wrong because that chaos that we live in, yeah, it's comforting. Yeah, we're good at it. And the addiction of, you know, the firefighter addiction, like is riding on a rig and seeing a header on the horizon, right?
Mhm.
There's no greater feeling.
Right.
You got the air horn going, you got the mechanical
Yeah.
going, you see a header on the horizon, and you're like, you feel alive.
Oh, yeah.
You feel alive. You have a purpose to make a difference right now.
Mhm.
And you're gonna throw it all on the table. And you're like, fuck yeah, I'm going in that thing. I may not come out, but I'm going in that thing and I'm gonna make a difference. And that is such an unhealthy addiction. I don't have the answer to it.
No.
I don't have the answer to it because like eventually it all comes to an end. And for me, it's coming to an end at 19 months. I'll never ride a rig again. Um, but with, with that comes all the stuff that you see and do and the way you think and being addicted to that chaos and and fixing chaos. And then what I found was I was good at that, but I couldn't pay bills.
Mm.
I couldn't live a normal life. I couldn't function as a grown up running my own life. I couldn't like fix the house. I couldn't pay the bills. I couldn't, get the kids to school on time, whatever it was. Like I wasn't good at living that life. and it stressed me out. And then when I would go back and just do what I do and do what I got paid to do, that was like, I'm here. Okay.
It's fascinating that you bring that up, the paying bills as you said, it's quite simply not being able to be an adult for yourself. And a lot of us, and myself included, like to chalk that up to, that's just ADHD talking. And it's not
Well,
that's not necessarily true because it does manifest itself in this trauma and this chaos and this love of chaos and this disdain for the calm.
yeah. And I think, um, and I've noticed recently a couple things that about myself. Um, and I don't know if anyone can identify with this. I imagine someone can and may tie into what you just said. It's really difficult for me to pay attention to something long enough outside of work to actually get anything out of it, such as reading a book.
Mm,
And it's starting to become a chosen discipline for me. I'm trying to do I'm going to sit down for 15 minutes. I'm going to try to read a book
yeah.
and try to be comfortable without the chaos and the calm, without, a distraction, whether it's guys are doing the video games when they're off, or they're chewing tobacco while they're drinking beer, or while they're, gambling, or whether, they're out mountain biking. So like, try sitting still, you
Right.
know, try living, try just putting, the stuff together. Like, you know, don't make your day about going surfing, skydiving, mountain biking, rock climbing, um, playing video games. All these things are distractions.
Yeah.
Can you actually sit down and run a house? It's pretty boring. It's pretty boring, but it's amazing how much energy it actually takes and how much focus. Um, if I didn't have my beautiful, loving wife running our life, we would be a shipwreck.
You know, there's so many themes there that I can relate to. That whole thing about, man, I used to be a reader, and unlike you, we're the same age, and unlike you, I didn't join early on. I joined second, third career, and late in life. So I've only been at it for 10 years, and I'm 54. But before this, yeah, man, reading was a huge part of my life. I would sit and read multiple books in a week. I'd have a couple books here and a book there. And now it's
Yeah.
like, man, I'm taking months to finish a book, and it just then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point because then I get frustrated with myself and it turns to some negative self-talk and you're like, no, get that shit out of your head, man. Just read what you can read. Do this, do that. But there's got to be that process where you're able to come back to center and focus. And I haven't typically really haven't found that, to be honest with you, yet.
Yeah. It's tough. And I'm trying so hard because, like I said, my journey's coming to an end. I signed that agreement 3.5 years ago that I would stay on a contract for 5 years. I don't have a choice. I technically are already retired. Um, so in 19 months, that's my last day.
Yeah.
And, and, there's no replacement for this. Everything that could possibly replace this is not going to hire someone who's 56 years old.
Right.
So, there's no becoming a cop at 56. There's no joining the military at 56. Like, hey man, like you got to be comfortable with the end of it and find the peace and calm in your life and find a way to focus. And I think that ties into a lot of the things I've accomplished of uh, getting to where I am, where I can talk about it and the things that actually work for me. And I want to throw some things out there because people need to know, like, you're not alone. Um, and two, there are things that will make your brain heal other than alcohol. Um, so, uh, San Diego City Fire Department has done a great job creating a behavioral wellness unit. I would argue that we're uh, one of the top behavioral wellness units in the country. We have a program called Focus, which is accessible to us at all times with counselors that we can go to for free. Been huge. Now, granted, not all of them really know. Not everyone will have a different experience with trauma. Some people will accumulate a ton of trauma over their career, such as our age. And if you'd never gone and you're going to have to start you know, back at the beginning, which I found out, well, mine started, when I talked to my counselor, this all started in 1993. It
Mhm.
took a lot of sessions to get a lot of stuff out to go from 1993 to 2018 and to where we are now to 2023. Because guess what? You stay in the trade, you don't stop accumulating trauma.
No, no, not at all.
It, and here's the other part of it is talking about it doesn't make it go away.
Mm-mm.
It- so, um, and I think that's what people misunderstand about it. So I ended up going to this counseling program and we ended up doing EMDR. And I can't remember what EMDR stands for, but anyone that's listening that's lived with trauma and it's painful, please look it up and request to get to it. I can equate it to this. It's like watching a game of Pong, if
Mhm.
anyone remembers that video game,
Mhm.
and you pick a color that's pleasing to your eye, and they take you back to the incident that you start with for me, which was the one I told everybody about back in 1993. And you watch this thing go back and forth like a ping pong ball on the screen with your pleasing color, and they speed it up and they speed it up and speed it up, and they're talking to you, and before you know it, like you're reliving the whole experience, and things are coming back into detail that you never knew, that you had seen, that you had heard, that you had discussed, and they get the whole thing out of you while you're being. I think it's basic hypnotization is what it very much equates to. Um, But the end result is that that memory that you had taken and shoved in the back of your head and drank down and suppressed and stepped on and said, I'm not going to talk about it. It hurts, blah, blah, blah. Every time I think about it, I well up emotionally and my eyes get teary and my voice cracks. By doing this EMDR, it's like taking that wrinkled shirt of a memory out of a corner and you iron it and you fold it and you press it and you put it away and you put it in a drawer and then you label it. And now guess what? That memory, it never went away, but now it's properly
Right.
processed. And so I did EMDR. I did a lot of sessions because I had to get through 20 something years at the time of memories. And it was like a Rolodex. It was like, oh, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about this. And it was just a shit ton. And I remember the counselor going, I'm glad we're helping you. I'm going to have to get someone else to start doing some of this with you. Like some of the things that you've said are like, they're starting to accumulate on me now. And I was vicariously traumatizing, one of these people. And I ended up working I finished my counseling with a guy who'd been a SWAT cop and he had become a counselor and psychiatrist. It worked really well, but I found that like there was still a lot of angst in the focus issues that we were just discussing. Um, And then I found out about a program called Saddles and Service, and I'm a huge proponent of this one. It's an equine therapy program that we have here in San Diego County, and I'm involved in it. And the goal of it is to take veterans and law enforcement and first responders, firefighters, and basically give them basic horse skills and eventually get you on a cattle drive, driving cattle out in Wyoming. And the guy that I was assigned to work with had been a Vietnam era Green Beret. And he put me in this pen with a horse. And the horse's name was Dylan, giant patch Clydesdale.
Hmm.
And this Clydesdale would not come anywhere fucking near me. And and this cowboy that was working with me said, that horse sees two things in the world. He sees prey and predators.
Hmm.
And he sees you as a predator. And you're going to have to learn how to be on his level. So he's not coming over the ears. So I'm not letting you out of this pen until you can let your guard down and that horse accepts you.
Right.
And it took a lot of focus to let the energy off because horses are amazing animals. And it took me a long time. It just took a better part of an hour to get to the point where my breathing and my posture and my mental energy and the horse can sense that energy. And I had my back to the horse, and like finally, I felt like, okay, I'm good. And all of a sudden, that horse came up with his giant head, and he stood over me. And with his head, he grabbed my chest and he pulled me into his chest, and he gave me a hug. And at that time, it was just like everything had been weighing on me. I just felt it start to come out, and I just started crying. And get to this day, when I see Dylan and I walk on that property and he sees me, he notices me and he recognizes me, and
Mhm.
um, pretty amazing. Equine therapy has been a huge help for me. Um, and that was just for the traumatic experiences and being able to, let that angst and energy off. And then the other part of it was the focus, what you and I were talking about. And I came across it unintentionally. Um, Archery. I
Nice.
I use archery, and there's no traumatic brain injury of a boom of discharging guns. A lot of firefighters, cops, military, everyone's into their guns and they love guns and they love to go shooting and do the hunting and everything. But um, putting an arrow downrange and putting it downrange accurately is a meditative process.
Yeah.
Um, because that bow it's a very nowadays they're very complex machines, and they're tuned very finely by all the bow technicians out there. And they're everywhere. Here in San Diego, there's great ones. One that I got into archery, and I found that when I'm a little messed up and angst, putting, 20, 50 arrows downrange and focusing and, going through the shot process, 'cause everything has to be right
Exactly.
with you, or your arrow's not going to hit the target. Um, and that's been a great vehicle for me. And I'm trying to turn that into actually bow hunting. Have not made it out there yet to bow hunt, but I've done the total archery challenge and gone out and done that. And I'm addicted to that concept now of Western bow hunting.
Well, that's fascinating because yeah, you think about it, and it is a meditative state. I mean, you have to calm the breathing, focus your concentration, and just you're
Yeah.
paying attention to one thing.
Yep. Yeah. And it's helping me bring my ability to focus back and not be like you said, ADHD, whatever, people that have post traumatic stress, they all have that focus problem.
Mhm.
Um, whatever we're going to call it. I don't know what we're going to call it, but the, uh, the archery definitely helps.
By the way, we'll go back to I've done a little bit of EMDR, and it's eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing.
Oh, that's what it
Yeah,
stands for.
yeah, yeah, and sometimes I have to refresh my brain as to what it is, and you're right, it is I like the analogy of taking a wrinkled shirt from the corner of the room and ironing it out, hanging it up, and now you have a proper memory of something, not this garbled you know, the garbled negativity attached to everything. You kind of you have a you put it in a proper place, and if you need to revisit it once in a while, it's okay to revisit it.
Yep.
You're not gonna be crippled by that visit.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's the important part. And not only is it important to do the past, but it teaches you and it trains you how to, because if you're going to stay in this trade, you're still going to see things.
Mhm.
And it allows you to learn how to properly process it moving forward so that you don't have to like constantly go back for someone else to help you to process it, to, you know, put it away right the first time
Right.
instead of just throwing it in the corner and hitting the bottle of alcohol and having beers with the boys, or, you know, getting off and getting high. Um, that's learning how to process it properly so that as you continue to be productive in your career and you still continue to do good for other people, being there for the worst moments other people have, that you can process it properly, because um, they're going to continue to happen if you stay in the trade. And then the other part of that is you need to get good for yourself at recognizing when it's not going right. And when instead of letting it slide away from you again, you need to be able to go, I'm struggling with this one. I'm going to have a little help. And
Yeah.
that just happened to me recently. Um, I had a rescue where a young lady had been a passenger in a car that was in a wreck that ran over an electrical junction box and dislodged it. And
Oh,
so the lady had not been injured in the accident at all. but she stepped out
Mm.
and stood on the junction box, and it re-energized and electrocuted her to the car. And when I got there, I was there first, and I was not working on the rescue that night. I was working on a pump, and but we had to use rescue to winch the car off eventually. Um, but I watched this girl burn to death,
Yeah.
and I watched her, I watched her hair burn off. I watched her clothes burn off. I watched her legs burn off down to the knees as she's attached to this car until the power was shut off. And at the time, it was significant for me. But the worst part was, and this is where I wanted to tie this in for everybody else. The next morning, um, my wife calls me and asks me if I had heard from our daughter, who's 20 years old. And I said, no, why? And she said, well, she didn't come home last night. And, I'm in a city of a transient population of 3 million people. But all of a sudden in my head, I couldn't recognize who that girl was, but I started processing that that could have been my daughter.
Right.
And in my dysfunctional thought process, it started to become my daughter. And what are the odds? Like I said, there's a transient population, 3 million people in this city every day. So my daughter, who's an adult, didn't come home, didn't check in. Um, Turns out my daughter is a lifeguard for the city, a beach guard. She was at work. She's not answering her phone because she can't have her phone at work.
Yeah, she's doing her job.
She's doing her job. She's
Right.
doing what she's supposed to do, you know? And in my messed up head, and I never told my wife this, I'm like, I started thinking that was her. And that's what you have to realize in yourself that like you, you can't let your emotions and your negative thoughts and the traumatic experiences control you and how you see the world. You're going to have to control it. And that's what this is all about. This is all about like hey, we all chose this career path. Whatever it is, we chose this career path. It's going to end up um, giving us the thing we all carry,
Yeah.
right? That's so. If you're going to choose to carry them, how are you going to choose to deal with them? And you have to choose healthy methods instead of unhealthy methods. And no one's going to know you like you know yourself, and it's going to take a lot of work, especially if you were deep behind the curveball like I was. Um, it's a lot of counseling, it's a lot of therapy, it's a lot of meditative process, staying off of controlled substances, uh, giving up the substances, not using alcohol as a crutch. It's not a controlled substance, but it is a drug, which forces you to use caffeine. And I imagine, as I say that, I'm identifying with quite a bit of people out there that, tie one on and the next day drink, 8, 10 cups of coffee to get through the day. Um,
I make an argument that alcohol is more damaging than some of the controlled substances.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. And it's because the alcohol industry is legal
Hmm.
and they've gotten it through. And I'm not going to say I never drink anymore. I created this environment at my rescue company that every time it was your birthday, the other 7 guys on your crew gave you a bottle of booze,
Mm.
so once a year, you're getting 7 free bottles of booze coming your way. And I'm not really the big drinker I was. I'll still have a few with the boys after work, or, great occasion. But I've learned that I'm not using that as a crutch anymore.
Dude, let's
I'm
be
not living
honest.
on that.
Alcohol, it hits a little differently at 54 the day after.
Well, yeah, it does. And if you're trying to stay in shape,
Yeah.
and if you're injured, and here's the other thing, that, like, alcohol makes pain of injuries go away for the time that you're under the influence of
Right.
alcohol.
Yeah.
But as soon as you're not under the influence, those injuries hurt worse.
Inflammation is much worse.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I that's what I've found because I'm dealing with a tear in my shoulder, a tear in my knee, an unknown injury in my hip that I can't fix. Uh, that I'm in pain sitting all the time. Um, those 3 injuries, like I'm trying to stay in shape, and I don't need to add alcohol to inflammation to the entire right side of my body
Yeah,
to the
right.
point where I can't use my body.
Right.
You know, I want to be able to work out, and I want to be able to go do what the 25, 35-year-old rescued firefighter is doing, what he's climbing, where he's going, you know, all that. I want to be able to do the same thing. You know, I want to pass my swim test. I want to climb SeaWorld Tower and rappel out of it. You know, I want to do all the fun shit that I'm paid to do. So,
So you mentioned it briefly, and you've mentioned it on and off. Tell me a little bit more about Tier One.
well, like I said, tier one athletes started off as a place where uh, a guy that didn't have his name out there was dumping a lot of the stuff in his head because he didn't find a place to put it. Um, and I always had this belief that, you know, firefighters uh, are tactical athletes. You know, I love to believe that, and I think we are. And in the last, since I started the page, it's definitely become a truism. Um, Firefighters, law enforcement, military, we're all tactical athletes. We're using our body to accomplish a task to help other people. So I created this page tier one athletes, and started writing my workouts on there, what I was doing, because it ties into what I just said. I was, as I aged, I tried to find a way to stay fit, to be able to do what the 20 something year old kid can do when I'm a 50 something year old person. Um, and so I, you know, was writing the strength component, the tactical conditioning component, the endurance component, and then the rehabilitation component. I was writing all of it out and posting it and putting what my workouts were, and then I would alternate between, you know, uh, uh, basically not always coming from San Diego City, because like I can provide photos and videos from San Diego City Fire Department, but the law enforcement community, I'd have to hijack pictures from that, and the military the same, because I'm not in those. And I ended up through this becoming friends with quite a few people that would provide content, and I had really good photos of, you know, tactical athletes in the fire and law and military environment doing what they do best, and then I would post the workouts, and I would post a concept of how to become like a better human being. And it was more coaching for myself on how I wanted to be as a human being than telling anyone else how to be. And this Instagram page blossomed, and it ended up, I think right now, without touching it, I think currently it's at, I have not put out more than two or three posts in the last year. I think it's at 14,400 people following it. Pretty significant for a nobody like me. I really am. I'm just a nobody. I'm just a guy that, you know, did a job for 30 something years. Um, but it did end up turning into speaking engagements. And I've been guest speaker at several things. People reached out to me, whether it was 4th of July or September 11th, or to a classroom during Zoom. During COVID time, I was a guest speaker at a young man's classroom in Florida. And I'm still in touch with this young man. This young man is now a CrossFit athlete, and he uh, is, has a desire to be a firefighter. He's a fire explorer over on the other side of the country. And, you know, I've had a positive influence in development of his life. I don't want to use his name. He's still a
Yeah.
minor. He's still in high school, but um, he's, you know, it's been an opportunity to give back. And I've had an amazing opportunity not only to give back, but I met an amazing amount of people that uh, do these jobs, whether it was other firefighters, um, or Navy SEALs, Green Berets, SWAT officers. And I ended up thinking, you know what, I want to share this. I want to share these relationships with other people. And so I started podcasting, and I got a good dozen of them out, both with random, these people that I have been blessed to know through my connections, and shared those relationships with other people. And they were organic conversations, just like the one we're having now. And they ended up being really good episodes. And then I lost my way when I got injured. I was like, what am I doing with this? Like, I didn't set out to be a podcast host. I didn't set out to become an Instagram influencer. I didn't set out to have merchandise. You know, like I'm wearing this shirt now. You know, this is one of my shirts. I don't sell them anymore. I don't sell the hats. I don't sell the shirts, the patches. I kind of lost my way and it was turning into a business. And it was never anything I really intended to do. It originally started out as my platform to heal myself. And I ended up, by healing myself, ended up helping others. Um, where it is right now, I don't know where it's going to go. I do enjoy the podcasting realm. I enjoy being a guest on podcasts. I've been a guest on several, and I really enjoy talking to other people and hearing their experiences. And so I may continue to do it. But when I'm no longer a rescue captain, tier one athlete, I'm just retired has been. It's kind of hard to keep a Instagram page of tier one athletes if you're not actually doing it. You know what I mean?
I, I don't know. I think you can swing it. I think you can swing it still.
Well, maybe. I know that the fitness component's not going to change. But, like I get made fun of a lot for how hard I work out, mostly by younger generations, but, and my family, but, how hard I work out. And granted, if I was out doing the, hey, take my shirt off type thing, I'm a 54-year-old guy, right? I am not like, one of my good friends who is a Instagram influencer who is a retired SWAT cop, a guy named Eric McCormick who runs Outlaw Strength. Now that guy's a bodybuilder
Hmm.
and he is our age and he's freaking ripped and he's in insane shape. I'm not in insane shape.
Right.
I've got nothing on the outside that people go, oh, that guy, look how great fitness he is. I want to know what he does. No. As a matter of fact, if most people saw myself with my shirt off, they'd be like, I'm not going to do anything that guy's doing. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But the fitness component I continue to do because it helps me sleep.
Right.
If my brain is not exhausted, if my body's not exhausted, my brain won't be exhausted. If my brain's not exhausted, then it ends up wandering, goes to places that I don't like. And, yes, nightmares are real. Recurring dreams are real, near misses are real, whether it's, like I went to Hurricane Katrina, I had dreams of floods for a good decade after that. Uh, you know, um, the recurring dream of missing that guy, that I talked of earlier, uh, that happens, there's one girl that talks to me in my sleep that I remember that, she'd been hit head on by she was drunk riding a bird scooter down an on ramp for the freeway and a car was going freeway speed up the on ramp and she came through the windshield and, destroyed her head and face. And then, the people that were shocked with the girl that came through the windshield slammed on the brakes and they threw her off and she flew 100 yards. And I was the first person to touch her and talk to her. And that girl talks to me in my sleep. It's one of those vivid,
Yeah.
imprints in your head that doesn't go away. And, and I'm not unique in that. I'm sure you have it. I'm sure everyone that's going to listen to this has those things that are so personal that happen. They don't really talk about it. And those things come back and they come back to you in your sleep. And if I don't wear my ass out, I don't want to drink to sleep anymore. I'm going to wear my ass out by working out. So that's what I do.
So I know you're getting ready to step away from this job. Basically 18 months left, correct?
Yep.
And that aside, where are you today? How are you feeling about yourself today?
Mentally, I'm good. Mentally and emotionally, I'm good. I've gotten through the work I've done through journaling, counseling, studying my Bible, archery, equine therapy, being open about my experiences, cataloging them, processing them, being healthy about it, talking about them, not using alcohol as a negative. Mentally, I'm good. I don't think I don't think I'm ever a risk for self destruction again. I think I've found what works. Uh, physically, I'm broken. Um, I've got a lot of injuries that cumulative traumatic injury that I'm an inch shorter than I used to be, whether it's from, weight of carrying gear or, getting hit on the head, being buried by a roof or whatever. Or just age, 54, I'm an inch shorter than I used to be, full inch. Um, my joints are messed up. Fortunately, I don't have any cancer, nothing like that. But the entire right side of my body, every joint has a problem, possibly needs a surgery. Um, that's that's hard to deal with. It's a lot of pain. It's a lot of getting warmed up, a lot of uh, therapy, a lot of mobility work. I've been using a lot of coaching to find mobility to get it back. Fortunately, our wellness program through our city offers physical therapy and athletic trainers. I've been learning a lot from them, how to, um, things I wish I had known when I was younger to prevent injury or make injuries minor instead of major. Um, and then purpose wise, you know, that whole concept of getting out when it's the only real job you ever did.
Mhm.
Um, that one's, I'm trying to find the coolness with that. I'm trying to find it's not about money. It's about what am I going to do with my time? I'm trying to find the purpose of my time uh, because my profession has dominated my time, getting good at what I do and being involved in, at what I see, what I believe to be the highest level of the fire service and getting really good at it, teaching that to others. When that's gone, I'm going to have to find a replacement for that. And I'm not sure. I equate it this way, someone asks me all the time. It's like I feel like I'm getting out of prison.
Yeah.
I feel like like that guy coming out of Shawshank Redemption. You know, he spent his whole adult life in prison. Then he
Right.
gets out. Um, I don't plan on hanging myself in a barn and leaving a
Yeah.
note
Yeah,
though.
let's not do that.
I no, I gotta find I gotta find the success in it. And fortunately, I have 4 kids. Uh, one of them will still be at home with me when I finish. Um, but enjoying their lives and seeing them succeed. My oldest son's graduating from college this year. He's my uh, and he's on the SMU football team. We go out and watch games out there in
Nice.
Dallas often. And then my daughter has already chosen this profession. Basically, the lifeguards in San Diego are part of the fire department.
Okay.
That's what she's chosen to do. And then I have 2 younger boys, one that's a junior in high school and one that's in 8th grade right now. And I think I just want to try to be present for them and be the best dad and husband I can be. Give them a solid foundation of showing them what a healthy relationship with a woman looks like and a marriage that lasts, and build that success story for them.
So back to some of the meat of the discussion. How do you think you're gonna replace the chaos?
I think I'm going to have to be okay without it,
Yeah.
but I am trying to get in really good shape. Like I said earlier, I think the animal that I'm going to try to put into the equation is I want to learn how to Western bow hunt.
Okay.
Um, and that's going to be my purpose for staying in shape.
Yeah.
And because you cannot get to where those animals are without being a good
No.
athlete.
No.
Yeah, and I think everything I've heard so far is getting close to one of those animals, whether it be elk or deer, and they're in the rut, and you just have a bow, and it's you and them. But I've heard it's an amazing rush. Hopefully, I get an opportunity to do that. I'm training to keep myself able to do it, running lots of elevation, lifting a lot of weights still, shooting my bow, making sure I'm good at that. But as far as how to do it, man, I'm Elmer Fudd right now. I just, I, if you ask me how I'm going to hunt an elk, I couldn't tell you.
Right.
I'm gonna have to find a way to get someone to teach me that part. And
Right.
I am actively looking for someone to teach me that.
Very cool. I forgot to ask you one of my questions at the beginning of the show, and I kick
Yeah.
myself when I forget. What's the last song you listened to?
Oh man. It's the last song I listened to, and that this is going to be either Jamie Johnson,
Okay.
High Cost of Living.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great song.
I was just in my gym and I was living that. It rang true with me, because the words are, um, the high cost of living ain't nothing like the cost of living high.
Right.
And it touched that sounds so orchestrated between you asking that question and me having listened to that song and saying that and tying everything into what I just said about substance abuse and PTSD. And by the way, I refuse to put the D on the end of it. That's society put the depression and dysfunction on there. Years ago, I started writing it, and actually, one of my posts calls it G, growth,
The growth.
post traumatic stress growth.
It's funny you say
And
that because I just recorded with, I don't know if you've heard of Tip of the Spear Leadership. Um,
I
and,
have,
all right.
yeah,
So Mike and I just recorded before we got on, and I was a guest on his show, and I talked about PTSD and how I actually think it's overused as a term in the fire service because I don't think we all have PTSD from what we've seen. There's stress and it's been traumatic for a lot of people, but the disorder part I don't think is true for most people. But I think growth can be true for everybody.
yeah. You have to choose the growth.
Right.
You have to choose it,
Right.
and you have to recognize that. Well, I mean, it's a lot of self assessment and realization. But if you're exposed to this stuff, uh, and if you're going to be in these trades, you're going to be exposed.
Right.
You have to choose how you're going to address it, and it's kind of like I equate it to tattoos on the soul, man. They a lot of the youth nowadays and a lot of our professions, they all wear tattoos on the outside. My tattoos are all on the inside. Like there's a gnarly story on the inside of my skin. Um,
Yeah. What was the
but I
quote? What
come
was
to,
the quote you gave me when we first talked? And I've got it written down. I want to see if you remember what you said.
me- honestly, I don't. I don't know if it was a quote or something that just
I
flew
think it
out of
was
my
something that
thought
flew out of
process.
your mouth. Let me see if I can find it. I know. Oh man, this is gonna bug me because I wrote it down because I was like, yeah, we're gonna. Oh, where is it? There it is. You said they're dirty, they're dangerous, they're personal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I kind of remember saying that, and
you were
that is,
you were talking about your son and a tattoo, and he asked you about him. Are you going to get a tattoo? And you said to him, "My tattoos are on the inside, and they're dirty, they're dangerous, they're personal."
yeah,
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 and I wrote it
that's,
down. I put it on the phone right there just because it's like, man, that's it right there. That's exactly what it is.
yeah, yeah. Nobody wants to see mine, and I don't want to expose them.
Yeah.
They're there. They'll never go away. That, and I think that's something that people need to understand. Um, Everything we talked about today, the things we carry, I just want everybody to understand they will never go away.
No.
And that's where that part of what I said about the dirty, the dangerous, and their personal. Those things that you carry will never go away. They're part of you. You have to choose what you're going to allow them to do to you. Are you going to choose to grow, or are you going to choose to just spiral out of control in your dysfunction?
Yeah.
And that's the truth of it. And I chose to survive. I chose to grow, and I hope everyone out there listening, they make the same choice.
Well, let's get to my last two questions because I think that's a perfect
Yeah.
spot. All right.
Okay.
You've been saying it all through, and I think you've said it more than I say it most times throughout day to day life. The things we all carry, and it's personal. We have all these things we carry. We carry those irons into a fire. We carry the tick into a fire, but we carry the shit out of a fire. Especially you talking about the search that you beat yourself up for. You carry that out. So we all have in our everyday lives an everyday carry. What's something you have on you that if you leave home without it, you're naked?
Oh, well, I think just like anyone else, as much as I told you
Mhm.
about wanting to throw the phone away and
Right.
disappear, the phone.
Yeah.
Um, I'm lost without my phone. It Bluetooths into my car. Uh, my daily my daily Bible reading is normally played while I'm driving. I'm very routine on that. So If I don't have my phone to listen to my daily Bible reading or my music for listening out or logging my workouts, because if I didn't log it, it didn't happen.
Right.
You know, then I feel pretty lost without it.
So what do you
Of
read?
course, that ties into this too.
Yeah. Yeah.
The AirPods,
They're right
you gotta
beside
have
me.
them.
So, so what are you reading these days? What's a book you want to recommend?
Oh gosh, so many. Like because I've been focusing on trying to read a book that I recommend. Um, well, I'm just gonna say the last book I finished uh, was "The Case for Christ" by Lee Strobel,
Okay.
and it's the argument of, did Jesus exist? Was he truly the Messiah? And was he actually resurrected and the Son of God? And the evidence is all broken down in there. I'm a big Christian. I believe in that. Um, Additionally, the other one I'm reading right now is, and it's a little late in my life because my kids are, like I said earlier, 23, 20, 17, 13, The Intentional Father. Um, I'm reading that right now, spending 15 minutes a day trying to read that. And it's more of a discipline book, more on myself, my relationship with my dad, how my relationship with my dad impacted me, and how I make sure that I end the lessons of what I learned of how to be a dad and don't push them back onto the next generation. And I think that's important for all of us that are men and leaders, that like to one realize that our dads were kids once too, and
Right.
just because they became our dad does not mean they actually grew up. And in my dad's case, his dad died when he was still a teenager, so he didn't have that being taught how to be a father by his father. That didn't happen. So that led to a lot of dysfunction that got pushed into my life that I do not want to push onto my kids. And then for entertainment purposes,
Hmm.
man, I'm a huge Jack Carr fan.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
um, I just because I treated myself as a reward for finishing some difficult books, just got the last Jack Carr novel delivered to me
All
uh,
right.
this week, and I enjoy that uh, the whole series, the whole Terminal List series
Yeah.
of his writing style. It's really good.
Yeah.
So
It's fun.
that's that.
That's definitely the little bit of brain candy, but it's fast. It's fun to read.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's well written. It reminds me a lot of my childhood. I used to, when I was a kid, when I could read a lot of books, I read a lot of uh, the Mac Bolan books.
Mm-hmm.
It was he was like and there's a lot of carryover. Apparently, I don't know Jack Carr. I would love to meet him, but apparently he read a lot of those Mac Bolan books as well.
I got you.
And he was a big fan of Magnum PI. He crosses Magnum PI into it, which our generation, Magnum PI was the coolest
Yeah,
dude.
of course. Yeah.
All dudes, right? All of us wanted to wear the short shorts and the flowered shirts. Of course, then as we got older, we realized short shorts don't look that good.
No, no, no. You got to do a lot of leg workouts to make them look good.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, man, I appreciate this conversation's been fantastic.
It really has. It's been good on my end. I feel like I had to readdress some things and get some things out again, and just stay on top of that routine maintenance. Draining the glass, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah. It was a good one. I appreciate the openness and honesty and the willingness to come on.
You bet. Hopefully, I can help somebody, and if anyone needs to ever talk, or just have someone to listen that's been down that road, I'm more than willing to listen to people.
Awesome. Tell people where they can find you on Instagram.
Well, the page that we were talking about is Tier One Athletes, TIER_1_athletes. That's still the name of it. It has a sister page attached to it, Tier One Talks. That was the podcast that I ran. Hasn't published an episode in a year or so. And then if you find those pages, you're going to find that it's also connected to other stuff. I run the Instagram page for our company, fire company, Rescue 2, SDFD _rescue_2. And you can see a lot of the good work we do, and a lot of the tributes to the people that we've lost along the way. and just it's an amazing team, an amazing job. A lot of great individuals there. I have a ton of great teammates around me that really make keep San Diego safe.
Cool. We'll get people to check out your stuff, man. You know what,
Well,
I'll sign off and stop this recording and just hang on 1 second. All right.
cool.
All right. We're out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Things We All Carry. Head over to the website, thethingsweallcarry.com, for show notes, resources, and to sign up for the newsletter. Until next week, take care of yourselves and remember to check in on each other.